We turn now to the ongoing tension in Ferguson, Missouri. There's news that the police chief there may step down. In an effort to calm anger, this comes as the city braces for a grand jury decision on whether to indict the white police officer Darren Wilson in the fatal shooting of unarmed teenager Michael Brown Jr. Recent leaks in what is supposed to be a secret process suggest to many that Wilson will walk free. If that happens, the anger could boil over. Cordell Whitlock is a freelance reporter, and he joins us from St. Louis with more on the situation in St. Louis. Cordell, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here with us. First of all, just give us take the temperature of the mood of the community there as everyone waits for the decision of the grand jury.
Well, Debbie, if you were to say that we're sitting on a powder keg here in the St. Louis area, I don't think that is a gross overstatement. Just last week, the superintendents of 7 schools, including the Ferguson School District, sent a letter to St. Louis County Prosecutor Bob McCullough asking that this decision be read on a Sunday so as to keep their students out of harm's way. So when we're talking about the potential for trouble here, you have to look at a few issues. Number one is the number of protesters. Just to give you the lay of the land here, I'm in Clayton, Missouri, about 15 minutes outside of St. Louis. Within a 20 to 25-minute drive from here are the remaining 90 municipalities in St. Louis County. So you'll have protesters coming from all over St. Louis County, all over the state of Missouri. And because the story has received national attention, you're going to have people coming from as far away as California to demonstrate. Number two is going to be the media presence. Back in August, I talked to a member of the national media who said he hadn't seen that many cameras since Trayvon Martin and OJ. And we all know that when the cameras are around, sometimes people do things they wouldn't otherwise do. Number three is the emotion that you talked about. If, in fact, Darren Wilson is found not guilty, there are going to be plenty of angry people around here. Tempers are going to be flaring. People are going to be on edge. You take those 3 things, put them in a punch bowl and mix them up. It's fair to say that law enforcement is going to have their hands full, Debbie.
And speaking of which, Cordell, has law enforcement released any information about what they're doing to prepare for this possible eruption of violence?
The standard answer you get is, we're going to be ready. That's what we heard from the St. Louis County Police Chief when he was asked just a few days ago. Now, if you remember back in August, in the aftermath of the shooting, clearly the Ferguson Police Department was out of their league. They didn't know how to handle mass crowds, particularly situations that could erupt in violence. That's when the St. Louis County Police Department took over, a much bigger department. In the past couple of months, they've spent in upwards of $250,000 arming themselves with riot gear, helmets, tear gas, in preparation for what could happen after this announcement. They've also contacted most of the local law enforcement, including St. Louis City. So if, in fact, trouble pops off, there will be enough officers mobilized going to areas where they're needed. The numbers aren't the question. Here's the issue. Exactly how will the officers deal with the people? You know, this isn't New York City. We're not used to mass protests. This is St. Louis. So it's fair to say that these officers initially were not prepared to deal with what was going on. So one can only hope that in the past couple of months they've received training on not only how to deal with crowds, Debbie, but how to deal with situations that could erupt into violence.
Cordell, I'm just wondering what the attitude is toward this possibility of violence amongst St. Louis. And as you and I know, I lived in St. Louis for many years. Ferguson is in St. Louis County. It is about 10 miles or more outside of St. Louis City. So there's a lot of the metropolitan area that is not Ferguson. How is the metropolitan area in general regarding this continued conflict and the possibility of more riots, more violence, more media attention on St. Louis?
I think there's a general sense here from some people that they just want this to be over. You know, they want their lives back, they want their communities back. And then there's another segment of the population that is committed to protesting, and their thought is, you know, unless there is real tangible change from this situation, you know, we're going to keep at it. And I think another important question here is, what about the people of Ferguson? You know, this is a community, 54,000 people, about 54% African American, and it's a community just like any other. These people work, they have kids, they want to take care of their families, and they have literally been part of a story that's grown bigger than them. I mean, from day one, we have to remember that the Brown family has always called for nonviolence. They've always spoken out against protests involving rioting or looting. And it's interesting, at yesterday's city council meeting, there's a group called One Ferguson, made up of Ferguson residents from all different backgrounds, all different colors. And they actually made a presentation to city council with tangible ways, a tangible list of things they think can be done to bridge the gap between city government, the police, and residents. A lot of these people want their communities back. We talked about the schools earlier. School was closed for a week and a half, 2 weeks. The kids in Ferguson weren't able to go to the beginning of school. So I think there's a concerted effort, and this gets lost in the cries for justice for Michael Brown and the cries for change. It gets lost that a community has literally been flipped upside down, and there's a concerted effort from these folks in Ferguson, I think, to take their community back, because sooner rather than later, they want their lives to get back to some sense of normalcy.
Cordell, I have about a minute or more or so to talk to you. Let me ask you a couple of things in that amount of time. As you said, the family of Michael Brown Jr., including his mother, Leslie McSpadden, and his father, Michael Brown Sr., did call for peace during those early days of unrest and violence. They asked for the city to respect the remembrance of their son on the day of his memorial. Have you heard any more from them publicly since then?
They have made a couple of appearances, but for the most part, Debbie, they've really, kept under the radar. And, we talk about the makeup here. I told you about, the 90 other municipalities. And the thing about it is, a lot of those municipalities are like Ferguson. I mean, over the years, there has been tension between the city governments, the police, and residents. This is nothing new. This is something that goes back 30, 40, 50 years. And I do think there's just a sense here from everyone that in order for this young man's death not to be in vain, regardless of what position you take, in order for this young man's death not to be in vain, there has to be some serious discussion about reforming the way police treat these residents, the way the government treats these residents. There has to be some honest dialogue about race and class, because certainly things are going to change. The question, Debbie, is, are they going to change for the better, or is it going to be the same old story that we've seen before?
Cordell Whitlock, you've said that very well. Thank you so much for this great report. It's good to talk to you. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Debbie. Thank you.